Mr. Mayor, and thank you, members of council, and thanks to everyone that came out tonight. Think of where to start here. Start with the opportunity sites. To answer Mr. Gordon's question, the opportunity sites were the methodology behind them. It was sort of the strategic plan from the beginning took sort of a 30,000 foot view of the city of Cumberland and tried to determine what actions the city and the economic development entity could take to move our economy forward. And the opportunity sites were sort of developed, using that 30,000 foot view of, big picture, what are the appropriate areas for attention and development attention. Rolling Mill obviously has a lot of character, but it also has some of the only available flat land. It has interstate exits. There's a lot of reasons why that area has a market attraction. So it just, there's also Martin's Supermarket and the development that's around that. It has promise to being, that continued growth in that sector. As far as the opportunity sites, the individual plans, we actually do have Sage Policy Group out of Annapolis, Maryland, under contract right now to do 4 of the 7 opportunity sites. We selected Sage Policy Group through an open bidding process. This was advertised, I believe, on our website, the city website. There's notices in a few other publications trying to find reputable consultants to do this. We selected Sage Policy Group to do 4 of the 7 sites. The 4 we started with were generically referred to as downtown. It's sort of, Baltimore Street, Center Street, Liberty Street, the sort of the bricks, if you will. The Cumberland Plaza, the Willowbrook Road corridor, which starts at the outline of the corridor starts at the railroad tracks, where Baltimore Street becomes Baltimore Avenue, stretches out past the hospital, and then the Rolling Mill site, which starts sort of at the railroad tracks and stretches underneath the interstate and down to the Fort Cumberland Homes. So those are the 4 sites that we're studying right now. The question, I think the underlying question there of why not wait until we're, we go through all of the planning processes with the small individual site plans is, this is a community that we heard, I believe, loud and clear, wanted aggressive action, and we didn't want foot dragging. We didn't want a plan that sat on the shelf. We had high level concepts for each opportunity site, and all 7 of them, and we have already started seeing what the market capability is for all of them. If we don't, to make it simple, if we don't have to spend money on doing that individual site plan, and the market bears what the high level concept is, it would be sort of a waste of taxpayer dollars to go through a planning process just because we said we were going to go through a planning process. So, when there are market capable items, we are acting on them. I know it was asked what the total figure is. I'm going to refer back to what we've said multiple times. We are dealing with property owners on a case-by-case individual basis, and we're doing so confidentially between them and us. It is their property, it's nobody else's property, and we're trying to go through and look at their own individual situation, and we're really trying to approach this with fairness and in as compassionate a manner as we can. The other question that was thrown out, the eminent domain question, I know it's not going to be a satisfactory answer, but the answer and the reality is we don't want to have that conversation. It's not in anybody's best interest to have that conversation. We want to deal with each property owner, and we want to work with them on an individual basis, and we want this I've said it publicly many times, we want this to be a situation where people do not walk away irreparably damaged financially. I said it a few different times, a few different ways. This project is about community betterment, and community betterment is not going to come at the expense of individual property owners. There is no appetite for that on behalf of the Mayor and City Council. There's no appetite for that on behalf of the Cumberland Economic Development Corporation. So let's see. So the last remaining question that I have scribbled down here, and if there are some that I neglected, please follow up with those. Why wasn't it presented prior to the project starting? Well, I'll go back to what Councilman Kaufman stated and Mr. Hutcherson stated as well, that we spent a year talking about what the sites were and what the high-level concepts were for these sites. I've said a few times, I know Greg's heard me say it, we heard repeatedly last year, this community is tired of planning and then not seeing any implementation. We are going to unapologetically implement our strategic plan because it is the roadmap for making this a better community. So, you know, we've spent a year talking about these high-level concepts, and there was no secret to those meetings. We did everything we could to encourage people to come out because it wasn't neighborhood by neighborhood, parcel by parcel. This was a citywide thing, and we put notices in the newspaper, on all the radio stations. We created Facebook pages for each public hearing we had, and you know, I think we did everything we could to get people to come and interact with us about the future of their community. Our actions stem directly from that strategic plan, and so I feel as though we've talked about this publicly many times.
Geographic scope and projected timeline.
Geographic scope. This is, you know, the rolling mill area. I sort of outlined it. It starts, you know, the rolling mill area. Are you talking about the opportunity site project?
Well, the question was, what is the geographic scope of the project that's being addressed? The opportunity site is the rolling mill area. Can we be specific about the geographic scope of where the acquisitions are taking place?
Well, and I'm not trying to be evasive with that answer. Every property owner that is included has been communicated with directly. We have taken we sort of decided in the beginning of this that we were going to respect individual property owners and their right for privacy, and we would deal directly with them. Outlining a scope or a geographic scope, I think, sort of goes against that we set out in the beginning. Timeline, well, it would be nice to, you know, the generic answer is as soon as possible. You know, this community is hungry for private investment. This community is hungry for growth. So we would like to do this as quickly as possible. If I may, I do want to just the last comment that I want to make is, and I know we've spoken with the Times News, we've spoken with WCDC, we've spoken with Allegheny Radio and Go 106. We've said this as many times as we can, and I've already said it once. I just realized I've already said it once tonight. We want to work with each property owner within this area. We want to work with them one-on-one. We want to understand their situation. I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. We have no appetite to irreparably damage long-standing members of this community. You know, a lot of us don't live in that neighborhood, but we all live here. And there is no appetite to irreparably damage people that, you know, are essentially our neighbors. Okay. Thank you.
Before we conclude